We've painstakingly created our world, filled it with idyllic landscapes, and built up our society and culture. But along the hero's journey, we must meet one person that is going to sit beside the hero and point out the hypocrisy of everything we've built. They'll mock and rage against our people, our laws, maybe even our hero, and we're going to let them. Let's talk about the Trickster Archetype. I'm author DC Ferguson, and this is the Worldbuilding Dojo. Before we get started, I wanted to give you all a quick reminder. Subscribers to my newsletter are getting a copy of Cora Blake, Arcane Agent for free. This short story is a prequel to the Dragon Stream saga and a great chance to get started with the series. I linked the newsletter sign up in the comments. Make sure to sign up and get your free copy. The Trickster is a natural rebel, critic, and a bit of an anarchist. Their appearance in the hero's world is tumultuous. Like we've discussed in our previous video on allies, the hero may often cross paths with a trickster and be forced to best them as a rival before they join. But where rivals turn to allies are often physical confrontations, almost every encounter with a trickster will be some battle of wits. One of the main reasons for that is that the trickster is incredibly smart. The knowledge they possess comes at a price, though. They've grown up in the hero's world with a vastly different perception of it, and right there is the heart of the trickster. This archetype is a counterpoint to the world you've created. For you, as an author, the trickster hates your laws, and your system of government, your society or your culture, your nobility, the traditions you've created, the way the world works in general. When they look at your world, they only see the flaws. They are both your worst critic and the counterview to your world. You say it's an age of knights and nobility, of religion and chivalry. The trickster sees them as turning a blind eye to the poor. They see the knights being chivalrous for show, but when darkness falls, they do evil deeds in the shadows. It's important to think of the trickster as a person out of time. Sure, they exist alongside your hero, but their views and beliefs are such a counter to the world that they live in that it makes it seem like they belong in a different age. This juxtaposition can sometimes make them seem crazy, or sometimes the stress of living in this world has actually made them insane. We see this with the King of Ireland in Braveheart, an absolute madman by the look and sound of him. He joins William Wallace after asking if he'll get to kill the English. He also says that not only does he talk to God, but God talks back to him, and also refers to Ireland as his island. Here we have the trickster joining the hero for a shared cause, but they did not arrive at this conclusion the same way. William Wallace has his own reasons for attacking the English, with themes of revenge and freedom. Our buddy here believes God wants the English out of Ireland, and also that he owns it. This is one example of how a trickster joins with our hero because of a shared interest, even when their viewpoints are radically out of sync. This is also a great example of the other purpose served and why tricksters are so memorable. They're often comic relief. We'll get into that a bit later, but the odd perspective of our trickster often can be quite amusing and makes them endearing. First, we need to hop into our magic DeLorean, though, and travel back to find out why we need this insane person in our story. Okay, we're going to need a larger hat because it is big brain time. Unlike most of our previous archetypes, the trickster's purpose in storytelling is a bit intellectual. See, when we're looking at our tribal ancestors, they're trying to figure stuff out. The things you and I take for granted, science, technology, politics, culture, laws, morality, all of that has been built layer upon layer over the centuries. But our ancient bros were pioneers. They were breaking new ground. Yes, stealing is wrong, but why? You and I can articulate the difference between etiquette and law, but back then they were making this stuff up as they went along, and our stories are a reflection of that. So the hero's journey tales is where things like virtue and battles of light and shadow take place. Our ally is our brother in the tribe, and our mentor is a relic of the previous age. Where does the trickster fit in? Well, in a sense, the trickster is a new age, the rebel, the punk. But they're also a radical, someone cunning and intelligent that comes along to challenge everything that we've accepted as the status quo. Why would our ancestors want such a thing? Well, this radical is so extreme, they force us to question our own beliefs. We say, this is the way things should be, And the Trickster says, "Are you sure about that?" They rebel against everything, and as with most views and ideologies in the world, their extreme versus the status quo makes us meet in the middle. "But DC, surely you have a chart to explain all that." Well, guy who talks to your monitor, of course I have a chart, but I don't really like being called out like that. So, on any given issue, we have the conservative versus liberal view. No, we are not talking about modern politics here, because that gets so muddy, you may as well be drinking Nestle dirt. No. Conservative, with its root word conservate. These are conservationists of the old ways. Traditions we've held sacred and passed down. Our elder is the conservator of these practices. A liberal, from the word liberate, is the opposite of that. Our laws, all of them, traditions, everything we hold sacred is wrong. So, now, we've got two extreme ends of the spectrum. Now let's sacrifice virgins to a volcano monster. Tradition says we want to sacrifice these virgins to appease our volcano monster twice a year. This is the way we've been doing it, and it works for us. So the conservative view is to keep doing it. The liberal view is we never sacrifice anyone to the volcano monster. Maybe we don't believe in the volcano monster, or maybe we think the volcano monster isn't worth being afraid of. Let's go hunt him down. So we rebel against it. The Trickster has their own reasons, usually intelligent and well thought out. They force the conservative hero, who follows the old ways but is a harbinger of the new age, to learn from the Trickster. So maybe the new age needs some changes to a new way of thinking, and the hero is going to bring that with them into this new age. It's not enough just to vanquish the shadow. We want to give the audience an idea of what the world looks like after the shadow is gone. So the hero takes the lessons they've learned along their journey, which includes the Trickster's counterpoint, and they'll forge the new age with this information. Again, we see how understanding the purpose of the Trickster archetype adds so much more gravity and depth to the role. And here, you thought they were just for laughs. So, the Trickster archetype is one that's very near and dear to my heart. If you've read the Wicked Instruments series, you already know I made a Trickster one of the two protagonists of that series. So we're going to talk about her and a few other Tricksters to see how they're represented in storytelling. Understand that right off the bat, Tricksters are agents of change, pure and simple. They come in like a whirlwind, trying to upend the whole system at once. The wise hero looks at them, the chaotic storm that they are, and says, "Wait, you might have a point." Whereas most people are dismissing them out of hand. The fact that the Trickster is an outcast because of their views is already enough common ground to start from with the hero. If you remember our lessons about the hero, they're often raised in foreign lands or an outsider or outcast of some kind. This makes them kindred spirits with the Trickster, or at least forms the foundation for them to build upon. Now, I say Trickster, many would immediately think of Loki. With a nickname like God of Mischief, it's easy to see why. If we're talking about Norse mythology, that's probably about right. However, if we're talking about Marvel Comics and MCU, now we get a blurrier line. Loki is most definitely a shapeshifter in the first Thor film. In the Avengers, he's the Shadow. Now, in Thor Ragnarok, that's when we start really leaning into the Trickster. In Thor's time away, Loki has taken the place of Odin upon the throne, instituting his own law and even changing the history of how he should be remembered by the people. He's imposing a wild and radical worldview on Asgard under the guise of being his father. So, I guess 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Trixie in The Wicked Instruments is such a bizarre character to make into a hero. Even calling her a hero might be a stretch, but she certainly is in her own mind. On my world of Newland, each major city is its kind of own fiefdom, ruled by people that basically make up the rules as they go along, punishing those that would challenge their power and rigging justice to fill the coffers. One of my biggest plays on that theme is that practicing the religion of the god of trickery in Newland involves the most ridiculous bureaucracy to be found anywhere. In one of my favorite chapters in the first book, The Singer and the Charlatan, Trixie performs a seance to summon her god and seek his counsel in person. This ritual involves prayer, offerings, and a properly filed Form R-226. The reason the Trickster works is that they're dual purpose elements in stories. On one hand, they're feeding us levity and humor in an otherwise serious story, which gives our audience a break. But the reality is that they have some very serious concerns that merit being addressed. Deeper thought makes you ask, well, do they have a point? You see? If you just dismiss them out of hand, like their world society does, then you're one of them. But if you give it some thought, ask those critical questions, we might find ourselves looking through the hero's eyes. And maybe that's the whole point. Now you understand why we need them. As you probably gathered from the title, we're at that wonderful part where you ask, but DC, I have a story that requires my Trickster be a bagel, can I do that? And guy who talks to your monitor, you certainly can. As you may have also surmised from the title, one of the easiest examples is the magic mirror in Snow White. The mirror, when asked, speaks only truth to the one who asks. Unfortunately, in the Wicked Queen's world, that's not a truth she wants to hear. Now, I know what you're saying, and you're right. The Queen is not the hero. The magic mirror isn't funny or humorous in any way. The mirror doesn't raise any points that challenge the status quo. Well, that one I'll disagree with you, but for the first two you're right. The mirror speaks truth to the nobility, dressing down the most powerful by attacking their ego. This is definitely a function of the Trickster, but one we haven't talked too much about. You remember the concept of the court jester? Yes, he pokes fun, attacking the ego of the king, but it's also being done in jest to critique the king without getting murdered. So we can have the mirror do the exact same thing. Whether a magic, an artificial intelligence, or some supernatural spirit inhabiting the object, it can most definitely fill the role of the Trickster archetype in our story. So anytime you want to think about doing something like that, just think about the magic mirror. Easy enough, right? Oh boy, you want more than that. Alright, you twisted my arm. And that brings us to this week's deep cut. For that, we're going to look at the 1994 comedy The Mask. Stanley Ipkiss is a meek, insecure bank clerk, but when he finds an ancient mask with magical powers, it transforms him into the Mask, basically an incarnation of the god of mischief. So, the Mask has the spirit of the Trickster within, and when the hero uses it, they combine into this over-the-top magical prankster. When the film starts with the early transformations, Stanley has very, very, very little to do with it, and virtually no memory of the events, just bits and pieces like he had a few too many the night before. As time goes on, though, Stanley leans into the power, admiring the Trickster persona for everything that he is not. There are a bevy of psychological sub-themes going on in this film, so many that Carl Jung would spend a year breaking this down and analyzing it if he was alive and had a YouTube channel. The concept of the Trickster, making Stanley into his avatar against his will, the hero's reflection on what the mask means to him, and the freedom that comes with such power, the way that Stanley is transformed into a hero, not because he wears the mask, but because of the lessons wearing it imparted to him. It's all so much. Truly, if you're looking for another example of the Trickster being an inanimate object, watch this film for pretty much everything you need to know. The Trickster is a witty, cunning, and generally fun to write and play with archetype, but to treat them simply as comic relief isn't good enough. That's terrible Hollywood writing 101. We want to dig deeper, find the nuggets of truth in their radical perspective. Make the audience laugh, sure, but make them question the nature of your own creation. It adds a third dimension that can only make your world bigger and better. We're still working with the Boston-based Needs organization to get this beautiful lady a service dog. Her name is Liana. She's 11 and on the spectrum. This wonderful person is my little girl, and if you'd like to help her out, there's a link in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. The link is down there too, and you're going to get Cora Blake Arcane Agent totally free. You'll get cool news about what I'm working on in books and here on the channel, and it comes loaded with cool authors and promotions for fantasy and sci-fi. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear about new videos, and as always, I'm DC Ferguson. Now have fun and get crafting.